I've asked you to do one final thing, and I'll ask you to do it again tonight. I ask you to remember. Remember that we cannot have peace without justice. Remember that we must continue to disrupt the rules that prevent us from achieving real democracy. Remember that organizing and mobilizing and protesting and voting, all of that is part of the rising Black power that is driving change in our country. And during the past 3 nights, when I've asked you to think about remembering, I wanted us to use that time to go back into our past, to remember the Black heroes and sheroes whose lives and words inspire us. But tonight, we're going to do things just a little bit differently. Because tonight, we are living in a moment of history, a moment of unknown grands, a moment when our unknown grands and great-grands are going to maybe look to for inspiration for how to survive in future, let's call them wilderness moments. So instead of going into our past, I want to share with you a story from our historic present. As soon as the news broke of Senator Kamala Harris and her historic achievement of becoming the vice president-elect, I knew the first person I wanted to talk to was one of my dearest friends, the Reverend Dr. Yolanda Pierce. Now, Professor Pierce served as the founding director of the Center for African American Religious Life at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. If you've been, you know it's amazing. And in 2017, Yolanda became the first woman appointed as dean of the Divinity School at Howard University. So not only is Dean Pierce a history-making Black woman leader at Senator Harris's alma mater, she also is an AKA and the mom of a daughter who is in her junior year at Howard and who voted for the first time and worked as a poll worker in DC. So because my friend Yolanda Pierce stands at all of these connective intersections with Senator Harris, and because she herself is a genius storyteller of the history of the Black experience, I wanted to know how Yolanda was feeling, what she was thinking about in this moment. And so I called her, and she told me, she said, I was standing in line at the grocery store when the official news that President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris had won the race. She says to me, I'm overjoyed. The idea that an African-American woman, my soror, and a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, oh, that was hard to say, and a Bison, a Howard University graduate, a school where I now serve as dean, that she's going to the White House is absolutely historic. And then Yolanda went on to say, when I walked out of the store, people here in DC were honking horns and banging pots and screaming in the street and blasting music and literally weeping for joy. And the only thing I can compare that atmosphere in DC with right now is a victory parade after a war. Dr. Pierce goes on to say, I think that's the right metaphor, that the past months have been painful for the Black community, with the government's blatant racism and hatred and xenophobia and the callous disregard for Black life, that even hours after the call, people are still in the street and the go-go music is blasting. Dr. Pierce reminds us, Black folks aren't confused, she says. We know that even a Biden-Harris presidency doesn't mean racism magically disappears. We know the COVID pandemic doesn't care who's been elected as cases surge in our communities, but we're celebrating something profound. That Black women organizers like Stacey Abrams love their people enough to register voters that others had dismissed. The Black Lives Matter activists showed up again and again and again to protest and rally and march. That there will be an end to the vitriol that has showed up in our Twitter feeds for 4 years. And that maybe a little more decency and respect for humanity will be demonstrated at the highest levels of leadership. As for me, Dr. Pierce says, I'm celebrating that little Black girls and brown girls everywhere are watching someone who looks like them get ready to go to the White House in the second highest office in our nation. I'm celebrating the fact that Black schools and fraternities and sororities have been producing the best and the brightest for us for over 150 years. And it's a beautiful day for Howard University, for all HBCUs, for AKAs, for all the Divine Nine. And yes, there's still so much work to do. And yes, the struggle continues. But a little bit of Black joy is just what my spirit needed.